fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I'm back with another review of a 70s, 80s slasher throwback homage, or a Renaissance slasher, if you will. And this is probably the most popular of that genre, or the biggest one, or probably the best example of like what a Renaissance slasher is. I wouldn't say it's the best. I would probably give that to Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. But this probably is the biggest title in the Renaissance slasher genre, excuse me. And the only one to really spawn a franchise. It is 2006's Hatchet. Now, it's taken me a while to get to this, and I don't really know why. I've had this forever. I think I bought this shortly after it came out. I think it was out on DVD in 2007. Because it premiered at Tribeca in 06, and then it got its actual release in 07. And I think that's around the time I saw it. I was definitely in high school. But I remember being in Walmart and just seeing this. Originally, this came with a slipcase. I since don't have the slipcase. But just seeing like the title, an old school American horror, and just a bloody hatchet. I was already a huge fan of slasher films by that time. I was probably 15 or 16 by the time I saw this at Walmart. And I saw it there many times before I finally, I looked up a trailer. Still a great trailer with just, the shot of over the water of the Bayou Swamp with that young girl's voice telling the story of Victor Crowley as it just kind of turns red. Great trailer. And then finally, I said, I'll try it. I picked it up, gave it a shot, and I've always enjoyed this film. And rewatching it now, it's been several years since I've rewatched it. But this is still a very fun film. I would say Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon is a very clever deconstruction of a classic slasher film. Certainly with a lot of cameos and Easter eggs and references as well. This has a lot of cameos. It has all the tropes and cliches we love about slashers. But I think where Leslie Vernon is like a deconstruction, I would say this one is more about embrace. Like, it's... How do I want to... That's a deconstruction. This is a celebration. And it's kind of a mix of Friday the 13th and Madman. Even the killer himself, Victor Crowley, is like the perfect blend of like Jason Voorhees and Madman Mars. I mean, you got the group of characters. You have this very unique but recognizable setting. This being the Louisiana Bayou Swamp. The set during, not really a holiday, but a celebration. It's set during Mardi Gras. You have a killer with like a legend or a backstory that's told to us, played by Kate Hodder in a bunch of makeup. So that's all awesome. So it was written and directed by Adam Green, who would go on to direct Hatchet 2. He did not direct Hatchet 3. I think he directed Hatchet 4, to be honest. I think he did come back for 4. Yeah, he did. Which... I do own the 3 Hatchets. I don't own nor have I seen the 4th film. I might pick it up at some point. I've heard it's the worst, but I've also heard it's the best sequel. So it will be a surprise when I finally do see it. But the story behind Hatchet is actually kind of inspiring, which I'll get to. So written and directed by Adam Green. Produced by Scott Altamore, Sarah Albert, and Corey Neal. Oh, the cinematographer, that's who I wanted to mention. I thought he was a producer. Will Barrett. who I've heard that name before. I know he's worked on a lot of other films. Frozen, Hatchet 2, both are Adam Green films. I do have Frozen. That's actually a really good survival horror film. I really do enjoy that. Excuse me. But Adam Green also directed a film called Spiral with Joel David Moore, the lead in this, which is like a psychological horror film. I enjoy that as well. And he did direct a segment in the anthology Chillerama, which I do have, but I haven't got around to reviewing yet. It stars Joel David Moore, who I think most people would recognize as the robot voice boss in Grandma's Boy. Tamara Feldman, Dion Richmond, Mercedes McNabb, who was actually one of the summer camp girls from Addams Family Values. I can't remember her name. Perry Shen, who would be a recurring actor in all three of these. Not as the same character, but he also has a gimmick in each one of these. He speaks in a different accent. He's one of the comic reliefs. Joel Murray, Bill Murray's brother. Richard Reel, who I think everyone can recognize him from something. I mean, for horror films, he was the security guard that was killed in the beginning dream sequence of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I know him as Nicky's banker in Casino, but very recognizable character actor. And now for all the horror appearances. Tony Todd, Candyman, he has an appearance in this as Reverend Zombie, which is a much bigger character in Hatchet 2. Robert Englund, of course, Freddy Krueger, amongst just one of the biggest faces in horror. Him, along with Josh Leonard from Blair Witch Project, they appear in the opening as father and son, a gator poaching. And Kane Hodder is our killer. Now, this was made for, it was made for $1.5 million, but what really happened, or prior to even getting the $1.5 million, was it goes all the way back to when Adam Green was 8 years old. He said his older brother showed him Friday the 13th 2 and John Carpenter's The Thing, and he was a diehard horror fan ever since. He went to this summer camp in '83, and there was this legend of, in this rundown cabin called Hatchet Face. Don't go near it or Hatchet Face will get you. But none of the counselors had a story to tell, so Adam Green just made up this story for all the other kids there about Hatchet Face. About this kid who was deformed, the house caught on fire. He tried to get out, he was up against the door, the dad hit it with the hatchet, killed him. And now he stalks the camp to look, calling out for his daddy. He says he got in trouble and his parents were called, but he's always sad on that story. So then, 20 years later, 22, 4 so years later, he gets with some producers like Sarah Albert, Scott Altamore, and cameraman Will Barrett. They decide to go down to the bayou. They get on a gator tour. They shoot with like a camcorder the shot of the water for the trailer. They go to one of their friends who had a 3-year-old girl to do the voiceover for the trailer. And people like Ryan Rotten for Fangoria, Bloody Disgusting, they all got behind the trailer. And they all got behind it, they praised it, and the whole internet thought that this was a real made movie just based on the trailer. So then they were given $1.5 million, and they made, I think, a really fun Hatchet film. A really fun slasher film. It's kind of inspiring because, a bunch of people with no money, just, their investment was a swamp tour, essentially. That's what Adam Green said. Also, I want to get the... Oh, also, special makeup effects, John Carl Buechler. One of the greats for the 80s. I mean, he directed Friday 13th Part 7, which was then butchered, so we don't get to see any of the gore. It's all lost. Troll and Troll 2. He's done the effects on many films in the 80s. He did the effects and appears as the character Jack Cracker, who will appear in Hatchet 2. But the production designer, Brian McBrien, now they shot this in a desert in or around Los Angeles, and he was able to make it look like a Louisiana bayou swamp. And he did a very good job at it. I mean, this this does have some good atmosphere. You do actually feel damp. Like, you can feel the dampness. You can feel the heat. You can feel the stickiness of the swamp. So he did a very, very good job with the set design. The score was done by Andy Garfield, not Andrew Garfield, which at times ranges from goofy to silly to sort of like open and epic at times. And then other times it's, very Harry Manfredini, kind of Friday 13th type score. Some parts even have some Danny Elfman sounds to it. So the score is all over the place, but all the pieces work. That's basically it. So now, one thing about this movie is, yes, it is a slasher comedy. Now, Adam Green has gone on to say he doesn't believe in mixing horror and comedy, but you can have comedy in your horror as long as it's separate. I agree to a certain extent. I mean, I love Reanimator. I love Return of the Living Dead. I love Fright Night. Evil Dead 2 is like my 4th favorite film of all time. So, I think you can have horror and comedy blended if it's done well. But here, for like the first 45 minutes or so, it essentially is a comedy. I mean, once we see Robert Englund and Josh Leonard get killed, we go to Mardi Gras, and kind of has like a Hostel type feel, which this came out before Hostel, or right after. Yeah, Hostel was 05, I think. But, you got a group of friends, one of which is Adam Green, and actually they had so little money that a lot of the crew were extras during the Mardi Gras scene, and they actually were able to shut down Bourbon Street, not during the Mardi Gras, and they were able to actually make it look and feel like Mardi Gras. So anytime they had to make the set look like something or the location look like something, they did pull it off very well. But one guy, Ben, played by Joel David Moore, and his friend Marcus, played by Dion Richmond, they separate from the group. Ben just got dumped by his girlfriend. He's not feeling the whole scene. He wants to go on a haunted swamp tour. Marcus goes with them. They talk to this guy, Reverend Zombie, Tony Todd, which I think one of the funniest parts of the movie is Tony Todd as Reverend Zombie doing his Tony Todd whisper, like, I don't give swamp tours. And he tells the story why about this kid, he got scared, he slipped, he hit his head. And he's doing this whole whisper, and then he ends with, he hit his head and sued me for negligence. Just that part always hits me, and I laugh out loud. And yeah, the character of Marcus is the black comic relief, but he doesn't die first. He actually makes it almost to the end. And yeah, Perry Shen is Asian. They're both the comic relief, which is not just slasher, but a horror cliche or trope. But I gotta admit, the parts that are supposed to be funny, a lot of them are funny. Like the first hour or so, it is pretty funny. It is I mean, some parts are really goofy. You know, like when Marcus is trying to yell at Victor Crowley, like I would stick my foot so far up your ass, gonna be pulling shoelaces out of your teeth for a week. Some of it's kind of cheesy, especially the roles of who is it, Jenna and Misty, played by Mercedes McNabb and Jolie Fiora Avanti. Who Misty is the dumb blonde, and Jenna or whatever her name was, I want to say it was Jenna. She's this Jenna. She's this wannabe actress from NYU, but they're both just doing this Girls Gone Wild type thing with Joel Murray. So they all get on the swamp bus, which Perry Shen is their tour guide, and he starts off doing like this Louisiana. What's the term they're called? I think they're called like a Southern dandies. Like, well, you all go come on the swamp tour now. Like Southern accent, but like fancy at the same time. He's the tour guide, and then Richard Reel and Patrika Darbo are your typical elderly couple, like calling each other sweetums and loveums, and she like puts his safari hat on him and puts the string up, and they go through the whole swamp, and then the boat sinks. They end up stranded. The old guy gets his foot bitten by a gator, and it's about over an hour until we get to an actual Victor Crowley kill, other than the opening. And a lot of people dislike the fact that the first half is essentially a comedy, and then you get into the slasher film, but I see it so much as like a celebration of the genre, and that they're having so much fun with it, that I do forgive the comedy, and that once we get into, you know, the actual slasher portion, the second half, the comedy is really limited to Marcus and the tour guide. Which, yeah, after the old couple gets killed, Marcus is up in a tree with my second favorite line. He's like, "Can you see anything from up there?" And he says, "I can see no damn elephant man coming to get me." And then Ben is like, "There's no time to panic." Like, come on. No time to panic? The old couple gets killed because they're walking towards the Crowley house. Victor Crowley comes rushing out, hits Richard Reel in the shoulder a bunch of times. And I will say that effect is kind of wonky. Like, you can tell there's like a lot of padding and like the extra arm. And this is all done in... It's like one shot, but there's a cut. So it's like there's a cut in like one continuous rotating shot where he comes up behind her, grabs her like that, and the camera spins around, and when we're at Victor Crowley's back, there's a cut, and then it goes around again, but it's pretty seamless. And he just like rips her head like in half. You just kind of see her tongue going. This movie is gory. This is a fun, bloody, gory movie. First time I saw it, I saw those effects and I was blown away. This is a celebration of the Tom Savini Friday the 13th gore films. And you got John Carl Buechler doing the effects. That's awesome. No CGI. The only CGI I think would be during the opening credits when you got the camera going underwater and like all the fish and weeds and stuff. I think Hatchet 2 has some CGI kills. I was never a big fan of Hatchet 2 the first time I saw it. I've kind of grown to like it a little bit more, but I guess we'll have to see. And from there, they're killed off one by one. And each death is pretty different, too. I mean, you got the hatchet to the shoulder, kind of falling this way, then you got her head. But shortly before they get killed, that's when our female lead, Mary Beth, played by Tamara Feldman, which she would be replaced by, oh my god, why can I not remember her name? I feel so stupid that I can't remember her name now. Danielle Harris, wow. She's replaced by her for 2 and 3. She tells the actual story of Victor Crowley because the tour guide got it wrong on the tour about how Victor was this young, deformed boy. Kate Hodder also plays the father in this flashback. And I love the look of the flashback. It's got this grainy, kind of old school look to it that I'm always a sucker for, kind of a sepia tone, which I love. Which, I will say, as far as these Renaissance slashers, they do go more for, like, an actual look. Like, it's from the 80s, like, add some grit and grain. Like, say, All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, or, I think X also kind of did that. This does look and feel like a modern, newer film. But, it's just... It's almost like they found an 80s script and just, like, made it in the mid-2000s. If that makes sense. Like, it does look and feel and sound like an 80s slasher. Maybe not some of the dialogue, but without using any filters or using any older style camera equipment. Like, it does look modern, but I don't fault it for that. A lot of the camera work is actually kind of impressive because they were very limited on time and money, that they had to do a lot of things in one take and one shot. I mean, there's this one shot where Marcus and the tour guide, they're each carrying a Richard reel, and there's characters behind them. It's the entire cast so far. No one's been killed yet. They're all walking behind in like groups of 2. And the camera starts off in the front, goes all the way to the back where Ben and Mary Beth are, and then back up. All in one shot. And I'm a huge sucker for like long shots with like a steady cam or like a tracking shot. Always a sucker for that. But so yeah, you get the hatchet to the shoulder, you got the head ripped in half, you get a head twisted all the way around, and then it just like breaks off. You get like a geyser of blood. Yeah, it's not realistic, but this movie isn't going for realism. It's just going for, gory glory from the 80s. Blood also doesn't like spritz like a mist, like a fountain either. It's just having fun with it, along with everything else. There is a death with a gas-powered belt sander, like right to the mouth. Which I do like that shot because Victor does get stabbed with something as she's holding the belt sander up to the character. I'll say spoilers. Holding it up to Jenna's mouth. And then he gets like stabbed with a pitchfork or something. So he stops, and Jenna's kind of crawling around. And just like the look of her face with all the makeup, and just like the way the shot looks, it looks like this very grindhouse like look to it. I mean, you got like her eyes kind of looking up, her mouth's all mangled, got blood dripping everywhere. The music, the way she's kind of crawling and facing the camera, the way the lighting is, it just has this very late 70s, early 80s, like, it is not gritty or grainy or anything, but uh, I imagine if it did, it would look awesome. But that's one of my favorite shots just because it has this very grindhouse look to it. Eventually, they decide to fight back, realize that there's some gas cans back at the Crowley house. So they throw gas on them, they go to light them up. And there is a running gag in the first three. I don't know if it's in the fourth film, but whenever a character thinks that they've done something good or they're going to be saved or things are going to be alright, something bad happens and the character says, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." Which, in this movie, is something I can relate to because I have this kind of luck. He throws the lighter, Victor Crowley goes up in flames, he falls, and then we hear thunder and rain falls, and there's no ceiling in the shed. So he's like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." Of course, it puts him out. Also, the only death we have that's off-screen is the death of Misty, which when Ben is looking through the gas cans, she's supposed to be on the lookout, but like her severed head gets tossed in at him, then her limbless torso, and the severed head does look just like her. Also, the tour guide gets killed. Crowley takes a shovel, knocks from the knee down on one leg, then just when he falls, puts the shovel here, just steps on it, and his head rolls away. So it's got a variety of kills. I don't think any two characters die the same way, or even with the same weapon or anything, unless you count his bare hands. I mean, Joel Murray got his head twisted around. And then eventually, it's just Ben, Mary Beth, and Marcus. They make it to a cemetery, and they're running. He pops up around a mausoleum, and that was actually the first time the actors saw Kane Hodder in full makeup, because that was this has a lot of features on it too. There's actually some great like behind the scenes making of type stuff, and Kane Hodder would not let the actors see him while he was in makeup. And whenever they were gearing up for a scene, he'd be like kicking something and grunting and screaming. And you can see all the actors like jumping and being freaked out. The actress that plays Jenna, you can see her kind of starting to break down because she's so scared. But yeah, when they run around that mausoleum, that was the first time they saw him. So all the scares when he pops up, that's a genuine reaction from the actors. But Marcus, he gets like picked up and crushed, and then he gets his arms ripped off. Then he gets picked up by his ankles and swung against a mausoleum, which slow motion blood splattering all over a statue looks great. Then eventually it's just Ben and Mary Beth. Ben gets a pole from the gate of the cemetery. Cemetery gates. Pantera. Thrown, it lands in his foot, so they like push on it, so when Victor Crowley runs towards him, it impales him. And you get like the great final breath all over his face. Mary Beth does find her father and brother too. But they find her father and brother's boat, they get in it. You kind of have like the Friday the 13th type ending, where the music is all pleasant, everything's happy, they're in the boat. She gets pulled off, she's down in the water, and we should know something's up because we see Ben trying to like search for her, And, like, his hand comes down, you can see him grabbing, but then he gets pulled up, and then we just kind of see his hand go under, and it's just kind of like sitting there, like he's not even trying. But she grabs it, and Crowley's in the boat, holding Ben's arm so she can grab onto it. And then it's just up close to Victor Crowley, like screaming at her, and then just immediate cut. End credits. With the Marilyn Manson song New Shit on opening and closing credits. Now, at first I was like, that's it? That's how it ends? Well, she's totally dead. But I think Adam Green has had the whole trilogy planned out since the inception. At least for it to be 2 films, because even in the special features on this, he talks about Hatchet 2. So I think he was kind of going for like a Halloween 2 type sequel with this, because Hatchet 2 picks up immediately where this leaves off, with, you know, Mary Beth coming out of the water and Victor Crowley yelling in her face. Now, I've always found this to be a fun film. I mean, even if some of the dialogue sounds cheesy or corny or whatever, or poor, you know, even some of the jokes, like, again, like, you pull a shoelace out of your teeth for a week. And, like, come on, there's no time to panic. We all got to stick together. I guess it's kind of cheesy, but, I mean, so were a lot of 80s slasher films. And, you know, this movie knows exactly what it is, and is having fun being what it is. It's just a fun celebration of an entire genre that blew up in the 80s. And again, I would say I like Behind the Mask more as a movie, and that is more of a deconstruction, more of a look at slasher films from like another side of it. And also, people say that they shouldn't have comedy and horror or slashers. Go watch Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Funny as hell movie. Of course, that's a comedy horror film, not horror comedy. There is a difference. But, you know, it has all the tropes and cliches that we've come to associate with slashers. Has fun with it. You know, it has the token black guy who's the comic relief. He doesn't die first. You know, we have like the final girl that's strong and can put up a fight. No one really has sex in the movie, but, you know, like the girls gone wild, kind of wild girls, I guess. They get killed. And, you know, it's set in the woods, but it's not another camp movie. It does set itself different. It's in the Bayou Swamp. Like a lot of slashers that take place on holidays. I don't know if Mardi Gras is considered a holiday or just a celebration, but set during that. And, you know, a slew of recognizable horror actors. Tony Todd, Robert Englund, Kane Hodder, Josh Leonard, John Carl Buechler, who has appeared on camera before this as well. And I think this helped helped Adam Green make a name for himself. And Hatchet became a franchise. You know, 3 Hatchets, Victor Crowley, a comic series. And, you know, Harry Knowles from Ain't It Cool News, next icon of horror. There was another one that said, you know, Victor Crowley is definitely like the new face of horror, or the new icon of horror. And I can see why, because love or hate these movies, when it comes to the modern day Jason, Freddy, Michael, Leatherface, Pinhead, Chucky, Candyman, you know, I would say Jigsaw, probably the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers, Art the Clown, the new Pennywise, Annabelle doll. I mean, I hate Annabelle, and I'm agreeing that that's a new icon. I would definitely put Victor Crowley in there. And it's definitely the best of the... I'm still calling it a trilogy because I haven't seen the 4th film. It's still the most fun and best one for me, still. And, I mean, if people really don't like it because it mixes comedy and horror, I'm sure a lot of those same people love Hostel. It's the same kind of horror to comedy ratio. The first half is essentially a comedy. Then it just takes a turn into being a slasher film. Tons of fun, blood and gore. A fun killer with a good backstory, like a good legend behind them. And those are some of the best slasher villains, the ones that have a legend, like as like a backstory. And yeah, I've always liked this film. So I will be doing Hatchet 2 and 3. Again, I don't own Victor Crowley, and I haven't seen it, but maybe at some point. So yeah, what I think is probably the biggest name or the best example of the Renaissance throwback, whatever you want to call them, homage slashers. So stay tuned for the sequels, and thank you for watching.